Welcome everyone to this evening's ATS event, another one of these fantastic ATS events that I have the pleasure of chairing. I'm replacing the usual chair, David Shatland, who unfortunately can't be here today. My name is Michael Katakis, and I am a historian, among other things, specifically an economic historian of the Levant, of the late Ottoman Empire, and of port cities like Smyrna and Salonika. I'm not going to say more about myself. I'm delighted to welcome Sevinc Garner, who is Sevinc Garner, who is lecturer at University of Portsmouth in linguistics and cultural studies, if I'm not mistaken. Sevinc did her PhD in discourse analysis and gender at the University of Manchester. And you're conducting a fascinating research project on the assimilation of migrant women from Turkey in the UK. I'm really curious to hear more about it and how this sort of bridges research and community organisation, integration. It's such a broad and multifarious, multidisciplinary research project. So we're really looking forward to hearing about that today.
Thank you very much.
I guess you'll speak for about 45 minutes, I'm imagining, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. Great.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then we can do a
Even more
question and answer session. Yeah. Take it away.
Question and answer sessions.
Discussion.
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 That's what
discussion. Yeah.
Yes.
Interview.
Thank you so much, Michael, for this introduction. And before we start my presentation, I'd like to say thank you so much to Anglo-Turkish Society for giving me this opportunity, obviously, to share this project with you. And thank you so much, both of you, and also agreeing to be the chair of this talk. It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks so much for being here and for those who are joining us online. So, yes, as Michael explained, the title of my project, as you can see, is Language, Identity and Diaspora. So, migrant woman from Turkiye, as you know, we now use the title Turkey in the UK. So, before I start again my presentation, actually, I'd like to give a little bit more information about myself, why I have started this project, basically. So, in addition to being a lecturer at Portsmouth University, I've been working as an interpreter for almost 15 years, for people from Turkey, I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to this. So, as a member of this community, as a researcher, and also as an interpreter, obviously, I've gained so many personal insights about the lives of these people and the kind of challenges that they've been going through, how they struggle, in creating this empowerment or resistance, how they cope with these challenges and problems. So, all these different challenges, when I speak to them, and including like social isolation, you can see domestic violence, domestic abuse, you name it. So after all these years, obviously, I didn't just want to be a listener, because being a researcher and being an interpreter is just listening to their problems. So I wanted to do a bit more than that. I wanted to go beyond these lines and do something for these lives, maybe just a little drop in the ocean, but make a change in the lives of these people. So what I've done is I've become a member of many charities in Portsmouth, working for women, providing this free advice for education, finding a job, careers, etc. And also we have this Turkish charity in Portsmouth called South Anatolian Turkish Charity. It's a long title, I still can't remember it, the whole title, but basically we call it Turkish Charity in Portsmouth. So I've been working them as a secretary for many years. And in addition to that, other charities I mentioned. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because, as I said, I wanted to do something for these women, but also, just encourage them to be a part of the society, encourage them to integrate into the society, to be an active member of the society. So with this thoughts in my mind, I've started this free English courses. So these free English courses, first I started to teach myself as an English teacher, but then the demand was so high. So we decided to include not only migrant Turkish women, but also other women from different ethnic and, cultural backgrounds. And then the next step of this project was that it was supported by Portsmouth council, provide them, free classes, materials, etc. for these people. But Portsmouth University got involved in this project this year, which is amazing because I'm honored to say that this project is one of the award-winning projects because it was funded by the university. And also the other part of it is that the students, MAT SALT students, also got involved in this project now that they've been teaching as migrant women. So it's a win-win situation, if you like, because they've got this free education, and then our students, one of them is here, TJ, maybe he can share his personal insight later on. They're also improving their teaching skills. So that's the summary, the background of this project, basically. And I'm hoping that, this will continue for many years because we started in 2017 and it's still going on. And with these outcomes of this observation, I decided to, publish. I decided to work on this project more and give talks, basically, about this. So now, the brief introduction for my presentation is, as you can see, I've explained my current position for this and the outline of my talk. So I will give a very brief introduction about the aims and rationale, why this work is very important, and some brief research questions. And I'd like to just clarify two terms: identity, acculturation, and also what is a diasporic identity, if you like, diasporic and immigration, because they are usually considered as different terms. And we will be also looking at very briefly the historical development of first and second generation of Turkish women's immigration to the UK. If we have time, I will try to explain why I want to focus on the first and second generation, because it's quite important from a historical perspective. But that will be very, very brief because I'm not an historian. So don't ask me a lot of questions about history, please. My main focus would be on the language and integration problems of Turkish migrant women. And I hope that the most interesting part will be the last part, because then we will be talking about the results of the study, because I conducted some focus group discussions and interviews with these migrant women, and they've shared their personal insights about these questions. So it was quite interesting, I must tell you. Right. So then we can move on to the next part, introduction, so aims of this project. I'm hoping that in the future, this project will turn into a book. So with this purpose in my mind, I'd like to develop or add more aims later on, but it's just a short focus for this presentation. So it's to explore the integration challenges of these migrant Turkish women, such as language maintenance. What is the language maintenance? What kind of language barriers they are facing? What kind of identity crisis they are going through? Social isolation, etc., etc. So the list will go on. And the second main aim will be to gain their perspectives towards this impact of language and migration on these issues during this acculturation process. So as I said, I'd like to explain what is an acculturation. What do we mean by saying identity? But before that, again, the significance of this study gap, I'm sure you could find a lot of works studying these, the factors, the challenges that I mentioned from a social cultural perspective mainly. But the gap is that usually this is not really including the applied linguistic perspectives. So what I mean by saying that, the purpose would be to show how applied linguistics, so those terms that I use, language maintenance or language barriers, how they affect this acculturation process of these women, and how this combination of applied linguistic and social linguistic enrich migration and acculturation studies as well. So this is the part that I'm trying to, or gap I'm trying to fill in, if you like. So the research questions would be three main research questions, as you can see. The first one is, what are the motivations for these Turkish women, to migrate to the UK, to Europe in general, but to the UK in particular? And again, how does migration and language reshape, construct, or deconstruct their role in this host country, in the UK, receiving country, we can call it, and redefine their national and social and gender and religious identities in diaspora. And the third one would be, what role does language, when I say language, again, I mean both languages of the home country and the host country, because they shouldn't be separated really in their acculturation process, play in shaping their identity and their contribution to the host country, basically. So the last part of the third question is quite important, I think, because usually, again, the studies in these diaspora fields, they try to focus on the negative aspects of migration process. So the challenges, the discrimination, the social isolation they go through, but there are also protective factors, if you like, that will make this acculturation process enjoyable for this migrated people, if you like. So that's the part also I want to just touch briefly during my presentation. So again, methodology, as I mentioned before, is the quantitative primary, which means that, talking to these women, gaining their personal insights, asking questions about their feelings, which I think is more interesting than reading things on Google or books. So hopefully this will be the part that makes it different. So what do I mean by saying this identity? So usually, as you know, that identity is not a fixed term, it's a dynamic, ongoing process. And if you look at the definition of gender identity, it's basically the answer of the question, like, who am I? In a very general context, in a heterosexual social order. In other words, women is subordinated against men. And when we say ethnic identity, it is the definition given by Akpınar, the subjective feelings of having common values and norms experienced by ethnic group members. So it's basically, how do you define yourself? Are you Turkish? Are you British? Are you both of them, or are you none of them? So how do you see yourself, perceive yourself in migration, during the migration process, if you like? And the last one is diasporic identity that I will be using. So for some scholars, immigrant and diasporic identity are different, because the first one's got more neutral connotations, but the second one, diaspora, is more like a forced kind of migration process, if you like, maybe because of political reasons and other reasons. However, for my presentation, I will be using this diasporic identity to refer to both, because this is about all women coming from Turkiye. So that's why I'm not making any differentiation here. And the last term that I'd like to just look at very briefly is the acculturation process. So acculturation process is basically interaction with the cultural norms, the values, practices, social structures of the host country, here in our case, the UK. But also the important part is that maintaining elements of their original culture. So it's a dual process rather than one way of process. It's not just trying to assimilate, because the title might be misleading. It's not about assimilation. It's about maintaining your original identity, if you like, but at the same time trying to adapt to the new culture at the same time. So that's what we call as acculturation in diasporic studies. And that's what I'm going to refer to. And there is this very interesting U-curve model of culture shock model. Actually, it's a theoretical part of it, but I don't want to bore you with this. I just thought it's quite interesting to mention it, because when we talk about acculturation, this is the approach that I'd like to use for my project in the future. So there are 4 different stages. I mean, you can think about yourself, because we're all, more or less, apart from Craig, we are all migrants, or people who have migrated from different backgrounds. Am I right?
Second generation. Yeah.
Second generation. Yes.
I'm from Canada.
Right. Okay. So you are one of us. So you are one of us. Then can I say that? All right. Perfect. So everybody's on the same boat. So yeah, that's perfect. The reason I mention is that because everybody, I think, in this room have gone through these 4 stages of this model shock culture. So honeymoon, if you've heard about this, And the second stage is called culture shock and recovery stage, and acceptance, the other one's accomplishment. In order to make it more interesting, I usually tell my students that it's a bit like getting married. It's like a marriage process, because at the first stage, honeymoon, you're trying to, you're happy, you're trying to find out new things, the novelty of the husband or wife, all this excitement. But then in time, this is changing. So when you come to the second stage, which is the culture shock, think about UK is your partner about that, in this process. There is this disorientation, there is this irritability, because you start to face the challenges, you start to see the differences between your culture and the culture of the host country. So the third stage, think about is if you're married or you're in a relationship, is a similar. So then you have this recovery stage, which means that now you are developing a sense of coping mechanisms with these differences, with these problems, if you like, during this acculturation process. And the last one is like acceptance. In other words, it is the kind of level of adaptation stage, a sense of achievement and accomplishment, because you're trying to create a balance between your own cultural identity and the identity you're trying to create in the host country. So this is quite interesting U-curve shape of model, cultural model, if you like, because it's starting with the high euphoric term and then goes down and up again. So if you see any similarity, what I mean. Yes, so I hope the terms identity and acculturation are clear, so that we can move on to the next slide. This is the part that I find less interesting, but it's a part of the project that I have to mention, I'm sorry, which is the historical context. So here it's just a very, very brief kind of, background of the Turkish migration, in the UK. And as you know, there's this Alevis as the first wave of movers, during 1970s, and then the mainland as a second wave of movers, 1980s. We have asylum seekers, which is starting mainly after 1990s. And now we have the last stage, contemporary migration. This is more about different reasons, personal reasons. Ankara, I think it was the Ankara settlement, which has changed. It's not anymore the case. They changed in a different form, which I can't remember the name. So for these different reasons, they've been migrated to the UK. But also we need to mention the Cypriot Turks as well, because they are the early migrants in the UK, but it's mainly because of this, dual agreement between these two countries because of their colonial ties, Cyprus and Turkey. So I just wanted to mention this very brief historical background, but also it's important to mention that when we look at the last statistical results given by the Turkish Foreign Ministry, it says that around 7.5 million Turkish people living in Europe, and it's almost equal to 20% of the whole migrated people living in Europe, the continental Europe, including Turkey. So that means Turkish migration accounts the highest number of migrated ethnic groups in Europe in general, which is amazing when you think about it this way. And that's why this subject, quite important, looking at the lives of these people and what kind of, acculturation process they're going through. So that is the part of the historical context. Now, we are at the qualitative results of the study language and acculturation process. These are the questions that I have asked the participants, basically. So how do you define yourself? What is your identity? When I say identity, I mean your gender identity, national identity, religious identity. Yes, so all these different identities, there's one more that didn't come to my mind. And then I asked them about the reasons why they have moved to the UK and what is their attitude towards this LM. LM is the language maintenance. So in other words, this is referring to the language of the home country. So what is the importance of maintaining your native language? How does it affect your gender role or the way you perceive your gender role. And the other one is the language barrier and challenges. So when you look at the challenges, how does the language of the host country affect this process? What kind of challenge do you face when you think about the languages? I mean, when we look at the, for example, mainstream issues like educational background, lack of qualifications, maybe their visa status, maybe the family structures, these are all very important. But when we look at the overall picture and based on the kind of interviews that I've talked to these women, the major issue, the challenge they come up with is usually the language. So the lack of or language incompetence, if you like. But the question is, does it really allow you or knowing the language of those countries, is it enough basically to have an enjoyable acculturation process? Or do you think there are different factors that affect us? So that was the main kind of one of the main questions we had discussion about. And the other one is social engagement and language proficiency, which is linked to the previous one. And the last one, which is one of the most interesting part of this discussion, was the language and mother-child connection. Again, this is referring to the language maintenance and to what extent it is important really, or should you really improve your English in order to have a healthy and good relationship with your children, basically. So that was one of the other questions. And so the first question, identity and language migration, just having said that, I'd like to remind you that there were 10 Turkish migrant women that I've spoken to, and these are not all the answers. I've just taken some of the interesting ones that are relevant for our presentation. That was a very long discussion I had with them. So the first one, for example, participant one, as you know, they are anonymous and not mentioning their names. So when I asked, how would you describe your individual identity among other aspects of your identity? The answer was like, what do you mean by individual identity? And then my question was, I mean, the question of who am I? How do you answer this question? What interests do I have regardless of my responsibilities or what is socially expected of me? Do you think you're an individual or do you define yourself in relation to your family as a wife, as a daughter, as a sister-in-law, or do you have a different identity that you can see yourself? And the answer was again, so are you talking about selfishness? And you need to like yourself to some extent, but not very much. And then the other participant, one of the women participants, I don't have individual identities, rather our family identity, which is important to me as a wife and as a mother. So my husband sees himself as husband and a father, but he has got other aspects of his social identity. So it's not really, the question is not really about me. So my question was like, okay, living in the UK, has it changed your perception of your identity at all as a wife and mother? And in addition to this, and the same participant told me, why should it change? I can't even speak the language of these people. If I did, maybe I would be different. So I don't know, but still our culture is different. I'm Turkish and they're English and not the same. So that was from a very, very general perspective, as you can see, and probably not even understanding the question itself. But my role is not really to teach her at that moment what I mean, but to understand what he understands from my questions. And the participant 3 was saying, what identity? I'm married and must be a good wife and good mother for my children, right? And my dad said, which is a very common expression in Turkish, and Turkish people would know this. You leave this house, your father's house in Turkey, in your wedding dress, and the only way you can come back to this house is when you're wearing your shroud. So it's basically, it says that regardless of what she endures, you cannot leave your husband. And if you do, then this will cause a huge shame to everybody that she's connected. And instead of causing such a shame, it's better that you die so that we wouldn't lose our face in the community. And the other interesting question was that how's your attitude towards this language maintenance? To what extent is it really important to you to keep your native language? So the answer was, I believe we should maintain our first language. My children should speak Turkish, but also Kurdish too, so they would communicate with my extended family in Turkey. And the other one was saying, I don't like when my children speak English at home. I'm Turkish, and so is my husband. We speak Turkish at home and with our community, but if they don't speak our language, how can they be a part of this community? And participant 3 said, knowing any language is good for us and my children, so they have access to 2 bodies of culture and the knowledge. But I don't mind if their first language is English. So it's more like giving the options to their children, as this is the world's international language, they will benefit from this in education and business and more. It's something that's lacking in the mother, but she wants her children to gain this competence. And the last one, I sometimes speak English with my children as I feel closer to them when I speak their language, so they see I'm making an effort to speak their language. So this is a kind of summary showing that although they all seem to experience migration as a common experience, you can see that they've gone through maybe similar challenges. We see that there are still distinct structural aspects, that affected their experiences in the UK, and these challenges that I mentioned before, like social isolation, discrimination, maybe domestic abuse, some of them, confided in me about this as well, affected their, approach to this language maintenance. And we're coming to the answer, language barrier. So the question is like, what kind of barriers do you face when it comes to the host country's language? It says, I wish I could speak English well enough to be able to report my husband to the official authorities. So this was one of the heartbreaking, interviews I had actually, because you can see that what they've been going through. He's been abusing me for all these years of marriage. I helped him grow his business, acted like a slave. He never appreciated me nor rewarded me. So I wanted to go to school, improve my English, but he always gave me silly excuses. Why do you need it? You have me, you have your family, you have my family. What will you tell the concept infidels anyway? And they do nothing but go around pubs, don't cook or look after their children. You see the generalization of stereotype of this host culture, if you like, the English people in their mind, and how they impose these stereotypes on their partners. And it's basically saying, you better stay with me. And the lady was a bit frustrated during this interview. It's let's say me. So it was always the focus was on him, but not myself. Then she gets very angry. Another participant was saying, because of language barrier, I'm befriended with Turkish people only, whom I wouldn't even look at on the street. So basically, he was saying that he's not happy with his social connections, but because of the language barrier, he has to befriend with people that he wouldn't want to. And that kind of limits his social circle, if you like, and maybe his personal development at the same time. And the last answer was one of the participant answer, I feel humiliated when I go shopping or to my children's school or even when I'm ill. I always rely on interpreters and don't even know if they translate well. So she was basically complaining how relying on translators is very frustrating, and she didn't trust them because she wasn't sure they were really translating accurately. So even all my job applications are rejected because I cannot speak English and I feel trapped and frustrated. And the question about social engagement and language proficiency. So I was saying, okay, what do you think would have changed in your life? What would you like to achieve if you had spoken the language at the level you wanted? So if I could speak English, I'd work, but I will also continue to look after my husband and children. So as you can see, they don't really differentiate their gender roles and identity from the new ones. They are trying to maintain them at the same time. And what do you mean looking after your husband? And I said, she said, if I'm not around, this was a bit funny though, he would burn down the whole house by accident because he's just incompetent, in many ways, always leaving pots on the house, cooking for hours, or kids could starve. So I need to be around, look after him as well, even if I speak good English. And this is my role as a wife and mother anyway. So that's a question mark for you to think about. What does that mean, really? And the last, one of the participants, the last quotation for the slide is that social presence of Turkish women has definitely improved in the UK, she said. But most of them are isolated from the mainstream society because of their lack of English. Again, language is empowerment. I wouldn't rely on anybody but myself and work and make good network and gain my self-confidence. But right now, I don't feel that way because of my language barrier. So it goes back to the same conclusion. This part, as I said, it was one of the most interesting part, which is the last slide of my qualitative results, if you like. So how do you see the relationship between yourself and your children when it comes to the language? And the answer was, I don't feel I'm a good mother. And this was a very, very common answer that I heard from many of the participants during the discussions we had, for example, in the classrooms, because we had more than 30 students very often, and most of them was giving similar answers, basically. So saying, I don't feel I'm a good mother, I'm graduated from primary school, and I don't even know the language of the place I live in. I have dedicated my life to my children so they can speak good Turkish. So basically, I sacrificed or I compensated, what I wanted to improve in myself as an individual so that they wouldn't lose their cultural ties with the Turkish background. But nobody taught me or supported me to learn English, even my husband. Now I'm over 50 years old. How can I learn it? I feel tired and too old to learn English, and I feel my whole life is wasted here. And the last one, the last quotation is, I feel the same often. Again, I can't even help my children's primary school. I don't understand the language. They translate for me when we go shopping, when we go to school, when I speak to teachers, and I rely on my children. So the interesting part of this answer was that she was saying she thinks that the roles in the house have changed. So basically, she feels like a child and she feels that her children are like parents because they have the authority or they have the power of translating for the mother, and she doesn't even know that if they're translating again accurately. So she feels very vulnerable. She feels that she can't do her mother role in the way that she likes. They don't take me seriously, and I feel that we're just burdened on social authorities. So as you can see that the answers, most of these answers are really from a negative perspectives. Obviously, there are women who were also focusing on the protective factors, like they have good skills, good qualifications, good education background. I had interviewed them as well, but unfortunately, compared to these ones with the language incompetence, if you like, they weren't really much. And even then, these women were still complaining. I'm talking about women with good education background. For example, they studied in Turkey. They had really good jobs like nurses. I even met someone who was a doctor that she said she couldn't perform her job here because of this translating the qualification, to the English, what do you call it, like competency, I think. So obviously, she said it was quite difficult, and she had to work at jobs like with low income or low skills, and she feels very frustrated. And she's just one of the many migrated women like this. So the picture is more or less the same, unfortunately, here. So the conclusion is basically then maybe it will be too general to say this, but at least based on this the interview, the discussions that I had with my participants, I came out with this conclusion. So language is the most important factor to be able to integrate and join the social life, and combined with other limiting conditions such as gender roles, social isolation, ethnic community restrictions, then language barriers would create unfavorable influences on migrant women and make them vulnerable to their insecure social and economic conditions, unfortunately. And I just want to mention that, again, this is an ongoing project. It's not finished yet. So as I said, this interview, these discussions will continue. Maybe we will come up with different results, with different answers. But so far, the picture is quite negative and quite frustrating. And I know that most of us are aware of this. I know that most of us are talking to migrant women who are in similar situations. This is not only for Turkish migrant women, by the way, obviously, this is probably for any women migrated from different countries. But talking about this and having discussions about this social problems, if you like, is quite important because it creates more awareness, probably, and more raising the consciousness about their problems. Maybe having a little bit more sympathy towards them rather than just saying, "Oh, this is your problem. You need to study. You need to improve your English." But it's not that simple. It's not that easy to say such things to women, if you like. So that's the end of very short, hopefully, presentation, and I hope that it was pleasurable for you. Although the picture was very negative.
Well,
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
yeah, that's it.
Are you doing the right thing?
I think you are. Yeah, just press that red button. There you go. Perfect.
Thank you.
So that was a really fascinating talk, Sevinc. Thank you so much for sharing your ongoing research. You seem to have brought together very many strands, and you're considering sort of the interplay, the intermingling of these various strands. You've got a sort of socioeconomic component, you've got a migration component, you've got a diaspora component.
That's right.
There's a gender componont.
Yeah.
There's a linguistics component.
The main focus
It's
would be-
truly
yeah.
multidisciplinary.
It is very
and
multidisciplinary.
that's wonderful. I wanted to ask a basic question about your sample size when through this research project. How many women are you talking to? Do we have data on their age group, their socioeconomic background? Do we know when they came roughly to the UK?
Yes.
Is it a mix?
That's okay. Yes.
Yes, actually, we have this selection criteria, but it's not very limited because, as I said, I wanted to include different voices rather than just focus on one type of group of people. So they should be coming from Turkiye, and the age group is usually between 35 and 60, because I wanted to look at, the films of women with children mainly. Because one of the questions was about how this affects your relationship within the family, between yourself and children. There's so many different but tragic, and personal stories about this as well. I know that, for example, some of the women got in trouble with the social services, because they really couldn't adapt to the way of raising children, here. Obviously, there are so many differences and language barrier, because she felt very incompetent in terms of explaining herself to school, and they've misunderstood her. So that was her explanation, basically. She feels, she couldn't really express how it is different in Turkish culture to raise a child, for example, raising your voice, or maybe even shouting. Don't know. So for many Turkish people, this is very normal. This is a part of raising a child. It's a question mark. But here, if for example, authorities, hear from a child and the very serious, which was the case for some women. So to answer your question, yes, the exclusion criteria was that if you have no child, then I wouldn't really include in this study. But the age gap is so it's 35, 60, and coming from Turkiye. And I wanted to include different backgrounds because it's not just about women with kind of low qualification or, no experience at work, but I wanted to hear other part of the story, like women, for example, as I mentioned, having a good education level, high qualifications, coming from a maybe less oppressive background, if you like, because migration is, when you think about migration, always negative pictures. People often think that it is a really pessimistic, process for many people, but actually it's not. There, as I said, there are opportunities, wonderful opportunities for women to develop themselves, to improve their identity, their the way they perceive themselves, if you like, because some women were saying that because they've moved from a very conservative background in Turkey to a more kind of advanced, if you like, a developed way of life here. For them, it was a great experience because they've been seeing themselves from a different perspective. So it's very interesting to hear this women. How do you see this migration process, in your life? Has it changed your family structure? Has it changed your way of thinking about gender roles? Or do you see yourself as an individual rather than just in relation to your family, husband, or as a wife? So that's why I wanted to hear different voices about this, looking at their educational backgrounds and age. And I hope that will bring a more realistic picture, if you like.
Granularity.
Yes, instead of focusing on some certain group of,
Yes.
Turkish people.
I guess in that way you're able to almost begin to have a discussion about cause and effect as well, because you can categorize groups and say, right, this group engaging with these characters, with these elements could lead to this outcome. And I guess it's sort of easier to do like that. So I'm wondering, when it comes to matters of socioeconomic status and the kind of the origin of the migrant, where they're coming from. They're coming from a city, they're coming from a rural area.
Yes,
I'm sure that must have an impact on the attitudes towards acculturation and assimilation. I know you don't like the word assimilation, but integration.
Integration, that's better. It's got more positive connotation.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't know. Usually when we say assimilation, it's what is understood is that you are kind of living or cutting off your ties.
Becoming part of that society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sizing
yourself.
When you're just assimilating to the whole society. But many Turkish people wouldn't like this expression when I try to explain, because they say, oh, I'm still Turkish. I don't know, what do you mean? Yes, I've been here. Even the second generations who were born here, the children of these mothers, when we have this very informal talk, they don't want to define themselves as English only, although they don't even speak Turkish, some of them. So this is the influence of the family and parents, but also they feel very proud. You can see that they feel very proud of having this bilingual bio identity, if you like, the dual identity.
Yes.
So that's why I try to avoid using that assimilation, and it's more like a
that's clear.
Integration process for them. Yes, maintain both of them.
Right. One more question from me, and then I'm going to open up to the other members of the audience who I'm sure have more interesting questions than I do. So the last sort of, I guess, more academic question before we sort of perhaps broaden the conversation a little bit. So you've mentioned frustrating results so far, and I wonder if you've had any counter results to that, sort of those initial frustrating results, or any positive results, any results which have demonstrated an interest and an ability in learning the new language and acculturating. I guess that's part of your other work that you're doing as a teacher of English and provide for free. So what causes a Turkish migrant woman to learn the language and then become acculturated? We've sort of seen the example of what are the processes that might stymie that, but what would lead to the opposite happening?
Well, as I said, unfortunately, positive answers weren't that many. Compared to the negative ones. But there are good examples of this. As I said, in Turkey, people who couldn't have maybe the opportunities to, improve their language, improve their education level, but here they're quite happy. Some of the women were saying that, they're doing their master and hoping that, they will go into the labor market, which is also bringing the question of, their contribution to the host country, their contribution to the labor market, which is quite significant actually when you think about it. But usually the answer is that they were complaining about the lack of support, lack of kind of encouragement from the authorities,
Right.
professionals. I mean, I think it's not that straightforward when you think about it. There are supports, there are social, helps and, all these professionals there to help you. But I think it's more about they're finding their access to these social services. They are not sure how to approach them. They are, even though they speak the language. So I think this is a different kind of part of these issues. I mean, maybe they feel vulnerable, maybe they feel that, no one will take them seriously. Again, the family structure, because one of the extreme example that I've given, this lady's been married for 16 years. And although she could explain herself to a certain extent, she never had the encouragement to report to the officials, mainly because she was saying, because I'm Turkish, I'm not born in here, I'm not British, I don't know if they would take me seriously. So all the sort of the stereotypes in their mind are stopping them from going to this. The authorities that they would make, I'm sure that they would do their best to help, but to what extent and what they actually want is another question. Because if you want to integrate into the society, the main question would be, do you really want it?
Mhm.
Do you really want to be a part of the society? If when I say part of society, I mean like, would you really consider yourself British, and would it make you happy? Because from the answers that I received from this woman, they feel that they need to really stand back or isolate themselves from the mainstream of society, because they are firstly Turkish and they want to maintain this. But what I wasn't sure is it because of the family pressure, the culture, ethnic group pressure, or is it because they don't want to? That I wasn't sure.
Right.
So hopefully, I will.
It's an ongoing process, and so you're still looking for examples of the contrary.
Example.
Perhaps then you can set up some kind of a typology of, what factors lead one way, what factors lead another way.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping to find out. But it's quite interesting.
It's really fascinating.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So we have other people in the audience, and it'd be great to hear questions from them as well. We also have people online, I believe. I don't know how many. Someone, yes, somebody is online.
Yeah.
So if the person online, yeah, hi.
Hi.
Great to have. So I think we'll take some questions from the audience in person, and then if you have a question online, please do raise your hand, and we will bring you in as well. So would anyone like to? Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So you had mentioned at the beginning, I think it was a U-shaped curve, like acculturation. I was wondering if you observed any trend like that with the people that you interviewed, if there was any association between the number of years it had been since someone had arrived and their kind of perspectives on it.
Definitely. I mean, most of these participants that I've spoken, they've gone through this process, and I mean, this model obviously is very limited. It doesn't mean that it fits everyone's journey, if you like, but in general, I would say yes, because most of them said that they found it very exciting, very interesting, being in a different country, trying to explore new things. But I think majority of them are still at the second stage, I would say, if you really have to apply this theory, because they are still feeling this frustration, they're still going through these challenges, obviously, and it is very difficult to say that they would move on to the next stage because of all these factors that we've talked about, risk factors. And hardly I would say that I've met someone who would say that, okay, I'm at this stage, the last stage, I've accepted this culture, now I have these coping mechanisms. I don't really remember, some among my participants obviously saying that they're at that level yet. So yeah, that's
So there's a
some-
bottleneck at the culture shock
Mm.
stage, essentially.
Yes, if you really have to apply, but as I said, it's very limiting looking at the situation from that perspective.
I suppose it's never going to be as linear.
No, no, that's why it's the U-curve shape going up and down. I think this is the journey for everyone, in life. It's not just about migration process. So yeah.
Has a similar research project been conducted in Germany, to your knowledge?
Yes, I know, actually,
And-
and is one of the interesting dissertations that I found is with me.
Because they're now into the third generation.
Yes, definitely,
So
yes.
I dare say it's
Yeah.
a matter of generations.
Yes, I agree.
It just has to be.
I agree. That's a very good question. And
Yeah.
I was reading this article actually about this because I thought maybe there are some similarities, between.
So there must be.
That definitely
Yeah.
there are. But I think when we look at, as you said, people who migrated to Germany, it's much more early than UK.
50s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you know better. So when you think about that, I think the first generation probably would draw more positive picture than the ones who are living here, given the time that they've been living here. But when I read their stories, people who are living in Germany, I've got so many relatives. I'm sure many Turkish people have got the same thing, living in Germany. So more or less, the stories are the same. You're right, but to what extent they feel this dissatisfaction or frustration, in comparison with the ones who were living here, that's a big question mark. I'm not really sure about that.
Because it is a question, the key is language.
Yes, yeah,
It is the main factor. If these women were all able to speak good English, even with all the other negative factors you
Yes.
cited, they would still be in a reasonable
yes,
situation.
yes,
Even if you think of migration to the United States,
Yeah.
to America, first generation Italians,
Mm.
Greeks, whoever, Poles,
Mhm.
they probably didn't speak much English
No.
at all,
Exactly.
even as they lived there and died. But second generation, third generation, they have become American, but they've still stuck to their Italian roots,
Yes,
Greek roots, have they not?
yeah,
Yes.
German, Swedish.
yes.
Yeah.
Again, this is,
So,
I think, a
yeah.
bit like personal choice, isn't it? Like,
Also, for instance, I don't know how much is done. You said you teach English too, but that you do as a voluntary.
yes, it's just as it's in addition to my role.
But it's not the government's policy here is it?
That's a very good point that you raised, and thank you so much for that, because I
Yeah.
was going to mention that. So unfortunately not, when we think about, for example, all the numbers of these people, women who are waiting in the waiting list to go to the school, colleges, it's shocking actually, because some of them have been waiting for years.
They're waiting
be
to do
able
what? Go to,
to go to this the colleges that are providing free English by the government.
I
Yes.
see.
So this is one of the reasons that I wanted to start this free English courses, and I'm not the only one, obviously.
No, I know some other people.
Exactly, but I'm talking about in Portsmouth, because Portsmouth is a very
Yeah.
small
Of
city,
course,
but so in addition to, there's another language school that I work during the summer, LSI. They also do a very similar project, and it's really, really helpful, because this women, you could see that they're so happy, they're so thankful. And having this opportunity, I'd like to say thank you to TJ and all my other TESOL students, because thanks to them, we can extend the number of these classes for these women who are waiting for years to improve their English. And it's just the beginning for them, but at least it gives them motivation, at least it gives them kind of encouragement to take the next step, if you like.
assuming their husbands will let them attend these.
That's another,
Now, my son
That's
lives in
another-
Sweden,
right,
and in Sweden it is obligatory
good.
for immigrants to attend classes to
Good.
learn English.
Mhm.
I mean, sorry, Swedish.
Swedish, yeah.
Swedish. And my son actually attended some of them. I mean, he was not an immigrant.
No,
His wife is Swedish.
right,
So and then he said they were all Arabs, Africans, or
Right.
whoever,
Mhm.
and they were there very intent on learning Swedish,
Yeah.
because otherwise life in Sweden would be very difficult.
difficult for them.
Even though they all speak good English in
Yes.
Sweden.
That's not enough.
Yeah, it's not
No.
enough.
Exactly, it's not the official.
So that has to be really maybe
Mm.
here government policy,
Mhm.
if they can
Mm.
find a way
Mhm.
of funding it and doing it.
Exactly, exactly. I think this is one of the reasons that Portsmouth Council is very, very supportive on this, because, you know, they also depend on the individual like us when we start this English courses. They are happy to provide free classrooms, you know, free materials, because it's not just about the funding. It's also about finding the teachers,
Yeah, of course.
you know, because obviously they need to pay for them, and that's the job responsible for government, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. So people, volunteer teachers are quite important to help this people, especially women. But having said that, in our classrooms, there it's not just women. We also have men as well.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, so the policy at the beginning was only for women, you know, because the project is about migrant women. But then I started to receive a lot of emails, a lot of messages from men saying that, why is it only open for women? You know, isn't this discrimination? We're only allowed, you know. So we are all talking about discrimination, you know, against women, and then men are talking about discrimination. So you feel very guilty. So we started to obviously welcome men as well, right? I don't know how many men there were in the class.
We've at least two are very regular.
Mm.
One comes as a couple, so
Mm.
it's actually
But it was changing, wasn't it? Like
Yeah,
it
it
was
was,
because
it
you
was.
joined the project towards the end, but at
Good.
the beginning, I think the number was more than that. So, you know, they are not very regular like women, because
Right.
they need to work, they've got other responsibilities. But this woman, the other advantage of this classrooms that we provide is that we allow them to come with their children.
yes.
So, you know, that
Yeah.
was a big question. I had to negotiate this with the university, because obviously this is
Safeguarding.
yes, safeguarding situation, and also, you know, to what extent it would be useful for these women. But in the end, I had to convince them that you know, that's one of the reasons that they can't go to this, you know, English courses, because they don't accept them, and they have to wait, you know, until their children comes to a certain age. And again, it's a waste of time for them.
Yeah.
But it was amazing, wasn't it? I mean, even though they came with children, their priority was to learn the language, to focus on. You could see that how motivated they were. And some of them were even thinking about finding jobs, you know,
Mhm.
for themselves. I mean, as I said, obviously we are not trying to change their whole life, but this is just maybe, as I mentioned, a drop in the ocean.
Mhm.
It's just to give them some motivation, and I think it would make a big difference in their lives in the future.
How about online teaching?
That we have done this.
Prolonged? Yeah.
Unfortunately for myself, I don't have any time for that. I don't even teach these classes that I've started myself anymore, as I said, because I've got responsibilities at uni and some other additional things. But, you know, thanks to my students, this project, you know, hopefully will continue. Online, I'm not sure, but also the advantage of coming to the classroom in person is that they have a social contact.
Which is important.
Yes,
Very.
because some of them, they wouldn't even know how to use, you know, like they don't even have Zoom account or
Yeah.
Gmail accounts for these people. And this is the part of the society that we would like to touch, rather than people, you know, who have some education, because they can improve their English anyway to a certain extent. But these are the people that are starting from scratch. So they need a little bit push. They need a little, so they need to get out of the house, even with their children, and you can see the changes in their lives, and that makes us very, very happy, obviously. But the important thing is the continuity. So, I need to always kind of email them, text them, message them saying, don't be late, come on time. So our teachers are waiting. And this is, I don't want to generalize this, but it's a Turkish thing probably. When we say, for example, the class starts at 9 and they come at 10, if you say 10, they come at 11. So that was very, very, frustrating, but I felt for my students, obviously, because they've been waiting there patiently. It's so amazing. They never ever complained. So I started to change my tactics with them, and I said, okay, the class will start at 8:30, and then they start coming a little bit early, like maybe 9:15, something like that. So we were kind of trying to make a balance like that, knowing the Turkish culture, but they do in the end, they do come. Being late is not the point. They always wanted to come. And even before I came here, I received a lot of messages from them saying, when does it start? Because I told them it's going to be in September. And, you could see how desperate they feel staying at home, unfortunately. And this is not just the language learning for them. As I said, it's the interaction. Interaction and joining society, feeling that they're part of this, and even coming to the university, because we are running these classes now in the university's building. They feel so proud of themselves. They when they come to this is the first time, I've been to a school, university. Some of them, they're not even primary school. They haven't even finished their primary school. So imagine how it makes them feel, basically, being in that
It
environment.
must also make it difficult to teach them. Because I have a friend who lives in Warwick, and she is doing some teaching of English on a voluntary basis. And she tells me at least one of her students is Turkish, but of a very poor educational background.
Right.
Therefore, she finds it extremely difficult. If you say a noun, an adjective, a verb,
what does that mean?
it doesn't go very far. So that must be a stumbling block.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's mainly for my student to answer this. But what we did before you answer is that I think is that we try to divide the levels, like prime, elementary level, or just intermediate. But it's not that easy to get
No,
them.
of course not.
Because sometimes
Yes,
they
I
have
can
to
see
come
that,
all. What was your experience, DJ, about that?
To be honest, I come from a background where I used to teach at the uni back in Bombay, and I used to teach postgraduate as well as undergraduate levels. I used to teach English and filmmaking, journalism, etc. So I'll be very honest, when I started off, like she had just indicated, it was very tough for me. But then I figured out what my other classmates were doing, and they were like starting from the very basics. So if you look at the CEFR framework, they were looking at A1 or a level below A1, if there is a level below A1. So what they were doing is they were approaching the students as if they were toddlers. Okay, so like what we would do is we would show them pictures. This is apple. So apple is called, I don't know what is an apple called in Turkish, but it's called something. So we do relate it, and that's how we could break it down slowly and patiently, to be honest. And we did actually try with things like verbs, adjectives, and we figured out very soon that it was not working. So we had to drop our levels, which was, for me, it was actually very tough, but it was one of the best things that I could do because I just enjoyed the class. And like she said, I still remember an incident over the summer. After the classes had ended, I'd been to a super drugstore. And I saw one of my students over there. And she was so happy, and she tried her level best to ask me how I am. And that I was actually way too emotional for me. So I was very happy about it. And like she asked me, when is the next class starting? And I said, I believe October, so I hope. So I'm really looking forward to it. So
Yeah, hopefully.
it was.
It sounds like a great success already. I mean, it's, yeah.
Yes.
I would say so.
Do you have any tangible examples of women who you've taught who've then gone out and got a job, or that would be great to hear.
Yes, I do not know personally, but there's a personal experience that I shared right now because I met them at the store and they were because that is something that I used to teach.
Yeah.
So I was focused on the speaking aspect of the whole teaching spectrum, and I had actually taught them how to greet people, like how to greet, how to talk to people in the store, how to ask for stuff, etc. So they actually use those learnings and they use it on like I don't know in the store, but they did tell me like how am I, and they asked me how am I, which was actually like I found that like my like I could make a meaningful change. So it was very inspiring, and not only women, I even met one of our male students as well. And he told me that he's also very keen to join the class back in October. So I said, see you soon.
Yeah.
So,
And just to add what he was saying, so the kind of selection criteria for this classroom was women at the beginning, but then we added men. But one of the really impressive emotional moments of this the classrooms going on was that some women, they came with their children. And they were they were like asylum seekers, obviously, because of their visa status. They weren't allowed to work. They weren't allowed to go to the classes. Because obviously they had to wait. And she said their children. I think you would know better. One of them was like 7 years old. The other one was like 10 years old. And they couldn't enroll the school yet because they were still waiting for some complicated reasons. I can't remember. And they were coming to the classrooms with their children. And that was amazing because imagine that they're waiting at home to hear from the school and how they must be feeling. So it wasn't just for women, as you can see, it's changing the life of these children as well. And they were better learners, weren't they?
They were helping their mothers and
They were.
especially when it comes to using things like Translate, Google Translate, working the phones, the children were more adept and they were helping their mothers. And it was actually a very wholesome experience. Have the children like toddlers to teenagers.
Yes,
It was very, very inspiring.
Very important.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those experiences. It's really great to hear. I mean, sounds like, as I said at the start, you're bridging academia and social impact.
Yes.
Which is exactly what academia should be doing. Right? Academia should be doing a lot more of that. Very often it's sort of ivory tower, and very much in the academy. But you're going out there and you're getting things done. And so
that's exactly what I was trying to say at the beginning, because people were saying, okay, you're working on this, topics, women, language, gender, you've got publications, so why don't you change the topic? Because the problems don't change. It's still there. And the more we talk about it, the more we, have discussions about that. And I feel that, the more changes that may happen. Because as an academic, obviously, you can do a lot of research and publications, but what is the impact on this community? How does it change the life of these people? I mean, you can go and give a talk, conferences and seminars and improve your CV and profile, but if it doesn't make any change in the community, for me, it's not a big deal. I mean, I've got my colleagues who've got more publications than me, or they're working on the second book, etc. But working, and they say that, why don't you do the same? But working in this field, seeing the differences, seeing the changes in the lives of people is more rewarding, for me than increasing the, number of my publications. So I think it's a personal choice, and it's just going beyond the boundaries, as I said, and focusing on the life of those people.
Well, it is amazing, and hopefully more will will follow suit. And hopefully there can be similar experiments of this type happening in other cities, not just Portsmouth.
That's what I was gonna ask
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
So this was conducted targeting women in Portsmouth area,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
So how about, would you extend your study to Southampton,
Yes,
or are you in collaboration with any other
yes.
parts of UK?
Yes, actually, as you know very well, because I'd like to say thank you to Nestle here, because she was one of the participants at the beginning of this project, meant to be. She lives in Southampton, but unfortunately we had to have a break, when I was doing that research, and then we were just focusing on Portsmouth in that field. But hopefully we could expand it to different cities in the future. Why not? I mean, this is not just about Portsmouth. This is not about the city itself. It's about Turkish
I'm seeing a lot
migrant.
of migrant Turkish women, and they are in their ghettos, living in their own circle.
Yes,
I'm not so happy about it.
That's
Actually,
very-
I think I lived in this country for 27 years, and I'm quite integrated to the society.
Yeah.
I was working at the hospital as a
Yes.
doctor,
Yes,
but I'm seeing some other Turkish women.
Yes.
They are so isolated.
that's one of the main reasons. And having said that, I really, again, most of them were saying similar things, like they've got their own kind of small community that they don't really want to extend it, like small cliques, if you like. Because when I started this project in 2017, that's the beginning of the spring English classes, and then having a long break, etc. I've asked so many women to be a part, because I wanted to expand the number of participants, just making them more like quantitative rather than quantitative. So doing lots of survey, hearing different answers. But unfortunately, many of them approached this project in a very suspectful way, like, why are you doing this project? Why do you want to hear us? What is the reason that you are asking all these personal questions? So it was a bit, feeling that you have to explain yourself again and again. This is for you. This is not just for myself. It was difficult. So in the end, I had to just, leave it like an option. If you want to be a part of this, let me know, rather than trying to reach out to these people that I've known within that network. And as you said, not all of them really welcomed. Not all of them welcomed this discussion. They don't want to open up.
It's like an interesting question, because it kind of feels like your initial instinctive response would be that obviously communities are very good, and migrant communities help you feel at home and feel the sense of belonging in like the country that you've just come to. But then I suppose there is, to some extent, it could be a negative impact as well, if you feel like you're in your own circle, especially if you feel like you're supposed to maintain a certain role or a gender identity, and you feel like you're being cut off from the new identity that you could be having in your new country.
Yeah.
Comforting,
Yes.
Stay in your own bubble.
Yes, that's a very good point. Because, when you look at the old pictures, I said, it's not easy for them, being in a different country, coming from a different background. It's not easy. It's saying it easier than really practicing this, process. Because they're trying to negotiate multiple identities, when you think about it, by trying to make a balance between gender identity, racial identity, religious identity, all these different identities. And even for women, it's more difficult, because they've got this different expectations, how to be a good mom, how to be a good wife, how to be a good daughter, etc., coming from their home country. So it's really confusing for them, because it's a very difficult thing to manage, this complex interplay, if you like, between different tensions. You're coming from a very conservative heritage background, and then trying to be a different person, and should I be or should I not? So going through this, I think I've seen people gone through and still going through the mental problems, psychological problems, because, as I said, I work as an interpreter as well. It's an extra burden for me, because sometimes I have to give up on my academic responsibilities to do this, and they don't pay me well, by the way. But the main thing I do this is because I want to hear what they're going through. And obviously during this interpretation, they confide in you, they explain so many things that you don't want to hear, basically. You know, all this violence, abuse, mental problems they go through. And some of them, you know, these people, they say that they haven't really sought for, you know, they have mental support, if you like, health support.
Mhm.
And the main reason is because they don't trust the translators. They say that, you know, if I explain my problems, if I, you know, just tell everything in front of desk, maybe she will go and tell other Turkish people and everybody will know about this. So these people who have been talking about, they constantly ask the same person, say, for example, I want this person, I want, you know, Sevinc Garner, because they trust me, they know me through this Turkish charity. They know that what I do, and they say if it's not, she's not coming, then I'm not going to doctor, and I can't always go to these interpretations because of my responsibilities. And I see that they delay this, you know, treatments, if you like, and just imagine what they've been going through. It's not even it's also affecting their health and mental problems too.
Could I ask something? Sorry, please go first. I have another question which takes the conversation elsewhere.
No,
No, I'm going to move the conversation in a different direction.
DJ, so first of all, Dr. Garner, thank you so much for the whole project and the whole presentation. And given that I am a participant, I am a contributor to this, it's personally for me. I have actually two questions to ask, and the first question was you told about the different generations of women that you had interviewed.
First and second.
Yes. So, what was it that you chose the first? Like, what's the main intention to choose the first? And my second question would be, what are the contributions that these women made to the host country, like the United Kingdom?
Yeah, I
Could you
think
just explain?
to a certain extent I've already answered the second one.
Right.
But the first one, well, I mean, I hope it's interesting to say this because it was a part of my PhD. It was about a new Turkish woman, the image of new Turkish woman. And one of the reasons that I chose first generation is because these women, you know, they've experienced this nation building process in Turkey. When they think about their background, when they came to Turkey, when they were born, and they often talk about the image of this modern Turkish woman, and it's a kind of confusion theme concept for them because they are still kind of questioning. I'm coming from a traditional background. I'm, you know, like I need to be a good mother, but at the same time, during that modernist period, if you like, you know, the foundation of Turkish Republic, 1923, and then there is this nation building process, and the identity of new woman was actually the identity of new nation, because it was imposed upon them that you need to be modern, but also you need to be modest at the same time. So you need to educate to be educated. You need to go to school. You need to, you know, improve yourself. But at the same time, you need to be a good mother, and at the same time, you need to be a good wife. So they've been going through this tension, this struggle, you know, trying to understand what it means. And again, you know, when they question this image, for example, they say, okay, so does that mean that I need to educate myself for myself or for the society? But the whole idea is actually for the betterment of society. That was the whole idea, to create this new image, the image of new woman. So when they come to a different, you know, cultural setting, they're already struggling with this identity imposed upon them. And then now they are facing a different cultural values. So it's like a double or triple, if you like, kind of confusion for them. And how to what extent it's really difficult for them to understand. That's why I've chosen the first generation, to understand their perception of what it means to be a woman. What do you mean, good mother? What does it mean to you? And is it the same thing that you were experiencing in Turkiye, or is it a different thing? And to be honest, it's quite interesting to listen to first generation of women than the second one, because the second generation, because you know, they are here, they experience, they learn. For example, I would say you're the second generation, if I'm right. But what your mom experienced in Turkey is completely different process. So you see, it's more interesting to listen to, you know, women like Nestle and asking these questions and getting their perspectives. What did they impose upon their children, and what is right, what is wrong, is bringing more deep insights into the project. And for the first question, just very briefly, I can mention that, you know, as I said in the literature, that with the existing scholarship, they are more focusing on the negative aspects of this migration, as I said. The positive factors should be also emphasized, their contribution to this whole society. And for example, they complain about this very feminized domains in occupations. So what does that mean, feminized? Means like they say, okay, when we apply for the jobs, they are often, you know, in private sector, they are often kind of jobs, the majority of them are females. Like, for example, working as a social care workers, you know, looking after the elderlies, or working as a cleaning lady, or, you know, so it's usually within the private sector. And if you're lucky, then they find, you know, jobs in the restaurants, cafes, but they're still working at the back of the, you know, the building, which means in the kitchen. And this is more frustrating, especially for women who have got higher qualifications, because it's the language barrier. And even if they speak the language, again, there are some maybe other factors. So it's a brain waste. Basically, it's a brain waste for the UK, because these people could have been used in a different way, you know, in different aspects. So
Yeah.
So that's
Great. So I think we're coming towards the end now. We've gone longer than usual, which is a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a very good thing. It means you're a very engaging speaker. So thank you very much.
To hear that.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for Sevinc. It's been really, really, really interesting. I think for the benefit of the people online who are they still online? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, benefit of the people in the room.
Yeah.
Let's give a round of applause to Sevinc.
Yes.